Am I the asshole? For not letting daughter control thermostat? Context: we're from the UK. I am struggling to see why we are the assholes as deemed by my parents and sister. My husband uses Reddit and thought this sub would provide a third insight that we are missing. My husband and I have two daughters, Jane and Lisa. This concerns Jane, who has been struggling with the cold. Jane started to complain about the temperature of the house now it's no longer summertime. Currently, we leave the central heating off all the time apart from in the early morning 5-7 a.m. so Lisa doesn't get too cold when she's awake. My husband and I don't have an issue with the temperature of the house, it's approx 16 C at night across all of the bedrooms since we checked in case her room was draftier. We don't really feel it and do not see where Jane is coming from. Jane complains and says she wears multiple layers to bed and around the house while we are all asleep. So, she asked if she could have access to the thermostat in order to switch the heating on at a higher temperature than 18 C what we set it as. She wants to raise it to 21 C but we said no. She keeps complaining about how she has to wear 4 layers to bed so she doesn't feel cold in the morning. Lisa says it isn't cold when we ask her. My husband and I also don't feel the cold so we said no to her asking and thought that would put an end to it. It did not. We had dinner at my parents' house in which Jane was making comments about how warm and toasty her grandparents' house is. My parents were shocked that we didn't allow her access to the thermostat and they tried to sway us into giving her access because it isn't right for her to sleep in multiple layers. My sister also agreed with them and said my daughter has valid points since the temperature is starting to drop in the night. Are we wrong here? Info. My husband and I don't have an issue with the temperature of the house. Lisa says it isn't cold when we ask her. My husband and I also don't feel the cold. How does everyone's body type compare here? Is Jane significantly thinner than the rest of you, or something? Info. Does your heating system set a temperature for your complete home or are there different heating units in each room? Also, a 5-year-old is not trustworthy when it comes to temperature. When my brother was 5 he had to be reminded to wear more than a shirt when it was snowing outside. Info. Would anybody in the house actually be too hot at 21 C? Is the grandparents' house which is warm and toasty for Jane uncomfortable for op? Reading all of the commentary it sounds like the objection to turning up the heat is nothing more than 3 out of 4 people are fine at the lower temperature. This is very different than 3 out of 4 people are too hot at 21 C. Given that money doesn't seem to be an issue, keeping the temperature colder just because only one person finds it cold seems just plain petty and spiteful. You're the asshole. It's not that you can't afford to raise the thermostat, it's not that raising the thermostat would make the rest of you uncomfortable. You reject every single option for a heat source like heated blanket or space heater rather than raising the thermostat. You just don't give a damn about your daughter. You just don't care that she's too cold. Also 16 degrees is fucking insane to keep a house at. You're the asshole. Get the girl a personal space heater for her room or a heated blanket or heating pad. She obviously not making it up that she is cold. Who are you to tell someone that they are not cold or not hot? I do understand not giving control of the thermostat to her, but to not make accommodations for her so she isn't cold is where you're the asshole. Also 16 degrees Celsius is freaking cold. And yes, this dumb American did have to Google what that is in Fahrenheit lol. Jane may also have low thyroid hormone, which can cause cold intolerance. That said, if you can afford it, can't you compromise with it a bit warmer? 16 degrees in house is fucking mad. I come from country with 4 seasons. During winter my house temperature was 15 degrees. Literally waking up in the morning I could see my own breath while breathing. I understand that we live in fucked up times thanks to cost of living, but 16 degrees is way too low. 18-19 is fine, you can wear thin jumper if you barely move. You're the asshole because you refuse to allow her a space heater. Why do you favor your youngest over your eldest? You're the asshole. If she's already wearing 4 layers and is cold, turn it up a couple of degrees as a compromise. Jane may be cold-natured as my grandmother called it. Just because everyone else feels okay, doesn't mean she doesn't feel cold. That being said, I think 2 things. Will raising the thermostat 3 points make it uncomfortable for everyone else? If not, why not raise it? Secondly, why not get her a small heater for her room? At least she can sleep warmly. I hate being warm, especially when sleeping. I guess the opposite is true, although it's easier to warm up than to cool off. You're the asshole. Why do you lock up the thermostat in your house? Why does only Lisa get consideration for temperature control? Are you all that poor that you have to keep the heat off in winter? Do you know it expends more energy to turn the heat on only 2 hours a day versus keeping it on all day? Also, how is it 16°C in the bedrooms even though your thermostat is set to 18°C, which is still cold, in my opinion? So based off the comments, you won't let your daughter get a space heater, an electric blanket, or contribute to the power bill simply because you don't want it warmer. Why? No money issues at all, but you need to start saving to spend extra money on the younger daughter. You suck and I would hate to be your daughter. How many other things in life have you neglected her on? You're the asshole. 16°C 60°F or even 18°C 64°F is too cold for most folks. Just because you're fine doesn't mean it's reasonable to expect her to be miserably freezing. I see you're not interested in keeping the heat on consistently either, so that's miserable for her as well. Why do you think she should suffer so you can save a few dollars on the power bill? Also, the things most folks are suggesting, heating blankets, space heaters, etc., actually use more electric than just keeping your house a comfortable and consistent temperature. Expecting her to have 4 layers to be moderately warm is unreasonable. You're the asshole. My wife and I like it cold at night, but 16°C is a little crazy. We keep ours at 18°C 64°F at night. I am in the US and don't know how different your HVAC system is. We have programmable Ecobee thermostats. It has remote sensors you can put in other rooms to monitor and balance the temp if needed. We have a sensor in our bedroom and in our daughter's. At night we do let the thermostat our first floor and basement go to 16°F, but no one is down there. You're the asshole. Give her solutions, don't make her just put up with it. The simplest would be to raise the thermostat a little, as the rest of your wouldn't overheat and she might be comfortable then. Different people have different comfortable temperatures. I personally would be comfortable with your normal temperature, as would 2 of my children. My wife and 3rd child would not, and it's hard to sleep well when you're too cold. 18°C is the minimum heat required in rentals here. Just saying, 16°C is a bit on the lower side. I had 15°C during the winter time once and it's not fun at all to sleep in that. Info: would a compromise like running the heat longer work for both of you? 21°C is might warm to keep a house, but 16°C is unpleasantly cold. If the heat was still set to 18°C but ran for most of the night, you'd strike a reasonable balance. You might still need to buy her a warmer duvet at that temp, though. Do you even like your daughter? She is freezing and you go to Reddit instead. I hate freezing. 16 is too cold for me. Several years ago we lived in an apartment that was particularly cold in the winter, and we couldn't really afford to warm it up properly. After 3 months of that misery we actually decided to do whatever we could to get out of there. That included changing jobs to afford a better place. I just didn't want to waste my life on being miserable 24/7. My husband didn't mind as much, but for me it was a deal breaker. You're the asshole. Your house sounds very cold. It's currently below 10 degrees outside and you're not using the central heating, of course she feels cold. Having the house set to 18 degrees at 9 a.m., it is going to be cold at night if you don't run the heating in the evening. Just because you are happy with 16 degrees doesn't mean everyone else must be. You are being a dick about this, but at the least you could buy her a cheap electric heater. You can get them from Screwfix for like £25.